Crystal needles of snow pierced the air of the frosty St. Cloud morning. Margaret Finch had arrived at the Stone mansion at 6 o'clock sharp, as usual. For 20 years she had cleaned this house, knew every corner of it, every habit of the owners. Unlocking the door with her own key, she went first to Victor Stone's office. He often stayed up late with papers and left a mess. The office door was ajar. Margaret knocked. No answer. She gently pushed the heavy oak door open. A scream caught in her throat. Turning into a strangled croak, Victor Stone lay on the floor beside his massive desk. A dark puddle of water had spread around his head, reflecting the first rays of the winter sun. A bronze statuette of an eagle, a gift from the mayor for his contribution to the city, lay nearby. It was now covered with blood and hair. With trembling hands, Margaret took out her cell phone and dialed 911. 23 minutes later, the Stone mansion was filled with uniformed men. Yellow and black tape blocked the entrance to the office, and 5 police cars lined the driveway. Detective Michael Frost stepped out of his tattered Ford. In his 48, he looked older, graying temples, wrinkles around his eyes, a perpetually tired look. 23 years on the St. Cloud police force had taught him one thing. There were human passions behind every crime, no matter how convoluted the circumstances might seem. He put on booties and latex gloves before entering the house. Patrol Officer Riley nodded at him, pointing in his direction. Victor Stone, 69 years old. Preliminary cause of death is cranial trauma from being struck with a heavy object. Discovered by the housekeeper at 6:07 this morning. Frost nodded silently and entered the office. The room looked like it had been the scene of a struggle. Overturned chair, scattered papers, displaced carpet. Victor Stone's body was already being processed by forensics, but the detective immediately noticed the details. The expensive suit, the gold watch that was still on the dead man's hand. Not a robbery. Time of death? Frost asked, turning to the medical examiner. Between midnight and 2 a.m., Dr. Shepard replied, looking up from the body. I'll be more precise after the autopsy. One blow, hard, struck from the right side. The statue is the murder weapon. Frost looked around the room. There was a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table. Next to it were 2 glasses of leftover champagne, so Victor wasn't alone. Had anyone interviewed the family yet? He asked Officer Riley. The son's wife, Anna Stone, and the son himself, David, had just arrived. They're in the living room. Anna Stone was exactly as she had been described in the local newspaper's society pages. A slender blonde with chiseled features and flawless makeup, even though it was early in the morning. She was wearing an expensive ivory pantsuit that made her look like the heroine of a Hollywood movie. Next to her sat David Stone, a tall man with a strong chin, dressed in a dark blue suit. His face expressed more confusion than grief. Mrs. Stone, Mr. Stone. Frost introduced himself and sat down across from them. I'm sorry for your loss. I need to ask you a few questions. Of course, Detective, Anna replied, her voice sounding unnaturally calm. We're here to help. When was the last time you saw Victor Stone? David and Anna looked at each other. I was in Minneapolis for a business meeting yesterday, David said. I didn't get back until this morning when I got a call that... His voice shook. I haven't seen my father since yesterday morning. And you, Mrs. Stone? Anna crossed her arms over her chest. I spent the night at my friend, Nancy Howell's. David and I live in a separate house on the other side of town. I stopped by Victor's the day before yesterday to help organize a fundraiser. Frost made a note in his notebook. Something in Anna's tone made him wary. I need your friend's contact. Sure, Anna dictated Nancy's number. Victor? Killed? She asked after a pause. Yes, sometime between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning. David stood up abruptly. Who could have done it? My father had no enemies. Everyone respected him. Mr. Stone, I understand how you feel, but right now I need facts. Who had access to the house? Only family members and Margaret, our housekeeper, David answered, sitting down again. Me, Anna, and my father had keys. The alarm system works properly. Was it on last night? Dad always turned it on before he went to bed. Frost made another note. If the alarm was on, that means Victor either let the killer in or the killer had a key and knew the code. I'm gonna need to check your alibis. Your business trip, Mr. Stone, and your stay with your friend, Mrs. Stone. Of course, Anna nodded. May I see the body? Not yet, Frost answered. Forensics is still working. I'll get back to you later. Leaving the living room, Frost immediately dialed Nancy Howell's number. The answer came after the 5th ring. Hello? The woman's voice sounded wary. Miss Howell, this is Detective Michael Frost of the St. Cloud Police Department. Do you know Anna Stone? Yes, we're best friends, and I also work for her father-in-law's company. Is something wrong? Victor Stone was murdered tonight. Anna claims she slept over. Can you confirm that? There was a pause. Yes, she was at my place, Nancy finally answered, but something in her voice made Frost tense. We watched a movie, drank wine. She stayed the night. What time did she come to your place? Around 8 p.m., and she didn't leave till morning? Another pause. Longer. We went to bed around 11. Yeah, I'm not sure she didn't leave after that. I take sleeping pills and sleep soundly. I see. I'll need to speak to you in person. Can you come to the police station? Sure, I'll be there in an hour. Frost went back to his office. CSU was finishing up evidence collection, photographing every detail of the crime scene. Anything interesting? He asked the head CSI. Lots of fingerprints, but most probably belong to the victim and family members. There are clear prints on the statue. There's alcohol residue in the glasses, analyzed. And there's one more thing. The CSI pointed to a trash can next to the table. Frost leaned over and saw a torn photograph. He carefully pulled out the fragments and spread them out on the table. The photograph was not fully restored, but it clearly showed Victor Stone with a young woman in an unambiguous pose. The woman's face was on the missing fragment. Interesting, Frost muttered. Check the house for a safe. The safe was behind the painting, a classic of the genre. The code was simple, Victor's date of birth, as David had suggested. Inside were documents, among which Frost immediately noticed a will marked amended and dated a week ago. Frost took a quick look at the document and raised his eyebrows in surprise. According to the new version, 60% of Victor Stone's fortune, including the controlling interest in the company, went not to his son, but to his daughter-in-law, Anna Stone. David was left only 20%, the rest distributed to charitable organizations. We may have a motive, Frost said to his partner, who had just arrived on the scene. Check David Stone's alibi. He claims he was in Minneapolis at the Marquis Hotel, and pay special attention to the relationships within that family. Something's not right here. The detective took another look around the office. 2 glasses of champagne, a torn photograph, a changed will in favor of the daughter-in-law. That's a lot of coincidences for one murder. Frost's cell phone rang. It was Dr. Shepard at the morgue. Frost, I have the preliminary results. There were sleeping pills in the victim's blood, enough to make him drowsy but not completely sedated. And one more thing. We found skin particles under the victim's fingernails. He struggled with his attacker. Frost thanked the doctor and thought about it. The sleeping pills in the blood meant the murder was planned. Someone had slipped Victor the drug and then stabbed him. But the victim was able to resist. Leaving the mansion, the detective took another look at the luxurious house, now holding a dark secret. The white snow around the mansion contrasted with Frost's dark thoughts. He knew that the facade of wealth often hid the dirtiest of secrets. "Detective!" Officer Riley called out to him. The precinct called. "Miss Howell is already waiting for you there." Frost nodded and headed for the car, mentally constructing a list of questions for Anna Stone's best friend. He had a feeling this case would be one of the most confusing of his career. But he never backed down in the face of difficulty. Victor Stone deserved justice, and Frost was determined to get it no matter what secrets he had to uncover. The St. Cloud police station greeted Detective Frost with the usual bustle. He went straight to the interrogation room where Nancy Howell was waiting for him. The short, brown-haired woman with sharp features was nervously rubbing the strap of her wristwatch. She smiled faintly at the detective. "Miss Howell, thank you for coming." Frost sat down across from her. "Tell me more about last night." Nancy adjusted the collar of her blouse. "Anna arrived around 8, like I said. We ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine, watched a romantic comedy. Did Anna seem concerned or tense?" No. No more than usual." No more than usual? Frost stepped forward. Was she tense a lot? Nancy bit her lip. She's been having a difficult relationship with her husband for the past few months. David's always busy with work, and they don't spend much time together. How was her relationship with her father-in-law? The blush on Nancy's cheeks grew brighter. They got along well. Miss Howell, Frost's voice hardened. Victor Stone was murdered. If you're hiding something, it could interfere with the investigation. Nancy swallowed and lowered her gaze. Anna left me yesterday around 11. Said she was on her way home, but I'm not sure she actually went there. Why? She got a text message and then she left right away. I saw the sender's name. Victor. Frost made a note in his notebook. You work at Stone's company. In what capacity? I'm an accountant. I do financial reporting. How would you characterize the company's financial situation? Nancy's under a lot of pressure. Officially, it's stable, but, the last 6 months have been troubled. Victor was making risky decisions, investing in questionable projects. David was against it, but his father wouldn't listen. Do you know anything about Victor's personal finances? Only what goes through the accounting department. Nancy hesitated a moment. There were a number of large transfers from the company account to Anna's personal account. Frost raised his eyebrows in surprise. When had these transfers started? About a year ago. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger. Did David know about this? I don't think so. Victor handled the company's finances on his own. David handled most of the operations. One last question, Miss Howell. How would you characterize the relationship between Victor and Anna? Nancy took a deep breath. Victor paid her special attention. Expensive gifts, compliments. He danced with her at corporate parties more often than a father-in-law should. A lot of people noticed, but no one said anything. Frost thanked Nancy and left the interrogation room. The picture was slowly taking shape, and it was not a pretty one. Back in his office, the detective plunged into studying the financial documents of the company Stones, which he was given by the Economic Crime Service. Data confirmed Nancy's words. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and from the accounts were withdrawn significant sums. Only for the last 3 months, Anna Stone received more than $300,000 at the same time. Officially, she was listed as a marketer with a salary of $6,000 a month. The phone on Frost's desk rang. Detective, it's Morris and Tech. We've been going over the surveillance footage from the neighboring house. It shows the lot in front of the Stone mansion, a white BMW parked in front of the gate at 2:30 yesterday. The driver used a remote to open the gate. At 2 a.m., the car was gone. Were you able to identify the driver? Just a silhouette. A woman. But the car is registered to Anna Stone. Frost thanked the technician and made another note. Anna lied about her whereabouts. The next step was to check David Stone's alibi. The detective called the Marquis Hotel in Minneapolis. Good afternoon, I'm interested in a guest named David Stone. He was supposed to stay with you last night. Just a moment, I'll check the information, the desk clerk replied. Yes, Mr. Stone checked in yesterday at 16 o'clock, but checked out at 21:30, although the room was booked until this morning. Are you sure? Positive. He went to the counter himself, said he had to return to St. Cloud urgently and checked out. Frost frowned. David had also lied about his whereabouts the night of the murder, 2 prime suspects, and both with false alibis. There was a knock on the office door. It was Officer Riley. Detective, forensics unlocked Victor Stone's cell phone. You need to see this. In the lab, the tech showed Frost the messenger correspondence between Victor and the contact saved as A. Can't stop thinking about you, Victor wrote. Me neither. When can I see you? AA replied. David is leaving tomorrow for Minneapolis. Come over tonight, after 8. What if he finds out? He'll never find out. I'll take care of it. Frost flipped on. The correspondence grew more candid, with photos that left no doubt about the nature of the relationship. Several of the selfies clearly showed Anna. Print it all out, Frost ordered, and prepare a warrant for Anna Stone's arrest. An hour later, Anna was sitting in the interrogation room. Her perfect hair and flawless makeup contrasted with her surroundings. Mrs. Stone, you lied to me about where you spent last night. Anna straightened her back. I don't know what you mean. Your car was recorded by security cameras outside Victor Stone's house yesterday between 11:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning. In addition, Frost placed the printouts of correspondence in front of her. We have evidence of your relationship with Victor. Anna's face went pale. I didn't kill him, she whispered. Then tell us the truth. Were you at Victor Stone's house the night he was killed? Anna nodded slowly. Yes, Victor and I. We'd been in a relationship for almost a year. David was always working. He stopped paying attention to me altogether. And Victor, he was attentive, generous, caring. And rich, Frost added. We know about the transfers to your account, and that he changed his will in your favor. Those were gifts, Anna was outraged. And yes, he wanted to change the will to provide for me. He said David couldn't handle the company alone. What happened last night? Anna took a deep breath. I arrived about 12:30. We drank champagne, talked about the future. Victor said he wanted to tell David about us. I was against it. It would ruin my marriage. We had a fight. I left around 2 in the morning. Victor was alive and well, I swear. You had a fight and you were the last person to see him alive. That's not a very convincing defense, Mrs. Stone. You must believe me. I would never hurt him. Frost leaned back in his chair and looked intently at Anna. I'm sure you realize what this looks like. A young woman has an affair with an older, wealthy man, receives large sums of money, becomes the main heiress, and then the man dies under mysterious circumstances. I loved him, Anna said quietly. Despite the age difference, despite the fact that he was my husband's father, I really loved him. What about your husband, Mrs. Stone? Did you love him too? Anna lowered her gaze. Once, yes, but we drifted apart. David thought only of work, of earning his father's approval. Victor said his son never lived up to his expectations. When was the last time you saw David? Yesterday morning, before he left for Minneapolis. He was supposed to be back today. He definitely went to Minneapolis? Sure, he had an important meeting with investors there. Frost stood up. Mrs. Stone, stay here, we're not finished yet. As Frost left the room, he met his partner. What about David Stone? We can't find him. He's not at home, he's not answering his cell phone. Check every hotel in the city, and send a squad car to his house to keep an eye out for a suspect. The detective went back to his office and went over the case files one more time. There were too many lies on both sides. Anna and Victor were secretly meeting behind David's back. David had gone to Minneapolis, but had returned earlier than he had planned. Was it an accident, or did he suspect something? The phone rang. CSU says the skin particles under Victor's fingernails belong to a man. DNA is being compared to samples taken from the house. Another detail, there were traces of 2 types of shoes on the floor in the study. Women's heeled shoes and men's boots. Frost sighed. He needed to find David Stone. After 2 hours of searching, a patrol officer reported that David Stone had shown up at his house. Frost immediately went there with a search warrant. David and Anna Stone's home was a modern mansion with panoramic windows located in the upscale St. Cloud neighborhood. David opened the door himself, looking exhausted. Mr. Stone, I need to ask you a few questions. David led the detective into the large living room. You lied about your stay in Minneapolis, Frost began without preamble. You left the Marquis Hotel at 9:30 in the evening, not in the morning as you claimed. David turned pale. I can explain. Where were you between 11 o'clock in the evening and 2 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, I was on my way home. I stopped at a roadside motel on the way. I needed to think. About what, Mr. Stone? David covered his face with his hands. I knew about them. Anna and my father. I saw the messages on her phone a few weeks ago. I couldn't believe that the 2 people closest to me. His voice broke. Why didn't you tell me this right away? I didn't want anyone to know. It's, humiliating. I hoped it was just a fling, that it would pass. Did you know that your father had changed his will in Anna's favor? David looked up sharply. What? No, I didn't know anything about it. Frost watched David's reaction carefully. The shock looked genuine. According to the new will, 60% of your father's estate, including controlling interest in the company, goes to Anna. To you, only 20%. David looked shocked. It can't be. He always said the company was my inheritance, my responsibility. Your father changed his will a week ago. I didn't know, I swear. David stood up and walked to the window. It turns out she not only deceived me, but she convinced my father to rewrite his will. He turned sharply to the detective. Anna killed him. She'd gotten the money, and now she wanted the whole fortune. You had a motive too, Mr. Stone. You knew of their relationship, and last night you came back from Minneapolis early and lied about it. I didn't kill my father, David exclaimed. Yes, I was angry with him. I felt betrayed, but I would never... In that case, you'll have to explain exactly where you were at the time of the murder, and we'll need to check your car and your clothes. David spread his hands helplessly. Check whatever you want. I'm innocent. Frost obtained a search warrant and handed David over to the officers to escort him to the station. He then carefully inspected the house. There was a black SUV in the garage and a travel bag on the passenger seat. The detective opened it and found inside a crumpled shirt with dark stains that looked like blood. Pack this up for the lab, he ordered. In the bedroom, Frost turned his attention to the bedside table at David's side. In the drawer lay a thumb drive. The detective plugged it into David's laptop and discovered a folder of photographs. They depicted Anna and Victor in unambiguous situations in various places: a restaurant, a hotel, even David's own home. Frost closed the laptop. David didn't just know about the affair, he was gathering evidence. The question was, for what? For a divorce or something more drastic? Frost's phone rang. Detective, it's the crime lab. We got a DNA match. Skin particles under the victim's fingernails belong to David Stone. Frost thanked him for the information and thought about it. Everything pointed to David as the killer. Motive, opportunity, physical evidence. But something still left the detective uneasy. If David was planning a murder, why leave such obvious evidence behind? The experienced investigator knew that in the most intricate cases, the truth often lurked in details that at first glance seemed inconsequential. He once again mentally reconstructed the events of the evening. Anna arrives at Victor's house around 12:30. They drink champagne, fighting over what Victor wants to tell David about their relationship. Anna leaves around 2 in the morning. What if David came back early and found out about the meeting? What if he arrived at his father's house after Anna left, and there was a confrontation between them? Frost closed his eyes, visualizing the scene. David bursting into his father's house, accusing him of betrayal, of ruining his family and disinheriting him. Victor, weakened by the sleeping pills that Anna may have slipped him, is unable to fight back to his full strength. A struggle ensues, and in a rage, David grabs a heavy statue. But there were other possibilities. Perhaps Anna didn't leave at 2 in the morning as she claimed. Perhaps she was the one who had quarreled with Victor to the point of grabbing the statue. One thing Frost knew was that he needed to question both suspects again and find hard evidence. One of them, or both of them, were lying, and he was determined to find out the truth, no matter how unsavory it might be. The St. Cloud police station was a buzzing beehive. Victor Stone's murder was the top story on the local news. A wealthy businessman and respected member of the community had been murdered in his own home, and the main suspects were his son and daughter-in-law. Detective Frost sat in his office with all the case files spread out on his desk. It had been less than 2 days since the body had been discovered, but in that time the investigation had progressed far beyond that. There was a knock at the door. It was Dr. Shepard from the forensic lab. Detective, I have the forensic results. She placed a folder on the table. And they're quite interesting. Frost opened the folder and quickly reviewed the report. The fingerprints of both suspects were found on the statue? Yes, David's prints on the base and Anna's on the eagle's head, the part that was struck. There were also traces of the victim's blood and traces of Anna's skin on the statue. What about the sleeping pills in the blood? Zopiclone, a fairly common drug. The concentration suggests Victor took it shortly before he died, maybe an hour and a half. It's a small amount, but considering he was drinking alcohol, the effect was amplified. Exactly. He would have been inhibited, slowed reaction time. Shoe impressions? We identified 2 types: women's heeled shoes, matching Anna's shoe size, and men's shoes, sized to match David's. Frost tapped his pencil thoughtfully on the table. Anything else? Yes, and that's the most interesting part. We found skin particles under the victim's fingernails, and they belonged to David Stone. It's like Victor was defending himself against him. But the statue was used by Anna. At least her prints are on the striking part. Frost thanked Dr. Shepard and plunged into thought. The evidence was pointing in different directions. Anna's prints were on the murder weapon, but the struggle marks were with David. Which one had delivered the fatal blow? Or did they act together? Frost's partner, Detective Ramirez, stopped by the office. "Mike, we got some information from Minneapolis. I interviewed the staff at the Marquis Hotel. David Stone did check in there at 16 o'clock, but checked out around 9:30 in the evening. The front desk clerk confirmed this and identified him from a photograph. Said Stone seemed nervous, constantly checking his cell phone. Where was he then? Checked the cameras on the major highways. His car was spotted entering St. Cloud at 23:15. It's about an hour and a half drive from the city to the hotel, so the timing fits. So he could have been at his father's house around midnight. Exactly. One more thing. They found bloody clothes in the trunk of his car. The lab confirmed the blood was Victor's." Frost nodded. "Is David here yet?" "Yeah, he's waiting in the interrogation room." Good. I want to take another look at the crime scene. Maybe we missed something." The Stones' mansion greeted the detective with silence. Yellow police tape still blocked the entrance to the office. Frost put on his gloves and took another close look around the room. Something was keeping him uneasy. If Victor was expecting Anna, why 2 glasses of champagne? Why take sleeping pills before a romantic date? And where could he have gotten the drug? Frost walked over to the desk and opened the top drawer. Pens, a stapler, a notepad, blood pressure pills. But no sleeping pills. No drugs were found in the bedroom either, other than the usual analgesics. The detective took another look around the office. Something flickered on the bookshelf. A small glare from the glass. Frost stepped closer and saw a tiny camera skillfully camouflaged among the books. "Get the forensics guys in here now," he ordered his assistant. An hour later, the technicians retrieved the camera and connected it to a computer. It was a mini surveillance system with a motion sensor and a memory card. The camera turned on at 23:27 yesterday and recorded intermittently until 2 hours and 30 minutes past midnight, the technician reported. "Here's the footage." An image of the office appeared on the screen. Victor Stone was sitting at his desk, checking some documents. The sound of the doorbell. Victor raised his head, smiled, and walked out of the frame. A moment later, he returned with Anna. "Are you sure David won't be back sooner?" Victor asked, pouring champagne into 2 glasses. "Absolutely," Anna replied, taking a glass. "He called me half an hour ago. He was still at the hotel. They talked about some business matters, plans for the future. Then Victor took out a folder. "I've changed the will, as promised," he said. "You'll get a controlling interest and most of the cash. I don't believe David is capable of running the company." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Anna asked. "David will be furious." "David will never find out. And even if he does, what can he do? I'm tired of his incompetence, his eternal desire to please me, and his inability to make the right decisions at the same time. And yet, this is his father's company. You deserve more than David can give you." Victor walked over to Anna and hugged her. "We'll be together when the time is right. You'll leave him, and we won't have to hide anymore." Anna pulled away. "Victor, we talked about this. I can't just walk away from David, and you're his father. Think what a scandal that would be." Victor frowned. "Are you ashamed of our relationship?" "No, it's complicated." They continued their conversation, which was becoming increasingly tense. Victor insisted that they needed to stop hiding. Anna countered that she wasn't ready to take that step yet. Suddenly, Victor grabbed his head. "I don't feel well. I must be exhausted." "Why don't you lie down?" Anna suggested. "No, I'm just dizzy." "That's strange." Anna helped him into a chair and poured him a whiskey. "Drink it. It'll make you feel better." Victor took a sip and wrinkled his nose. It tasted strange. Anna sat down next to him on the arm of the chair and gently ran her hand through his hair. "You just need to rest. You've been working too hard." Victor covered his eyes. At that moment, the sound of the door opening came on the recording. "Anna?" The voiceover belonged to David. Anna jumped up, and Victor tried to rise, but swayed. "David? What are you doing here?" Anna asked in a trembling voice. David entered the frame. His face was contorted with rage. I know everything. I know about you too. Did you think I wouldn't notice? He turned to his father. How could you? My own daughter-in-law, my wife. David, calm down. Victor tried to straighten up. We can explain everything. Explain what? How you've been deceiving me for months? How you've been transferring the company's money into her account? Anna took a step toward the door. I think I'll go. Stop! David shouted. No one is going anywhere until I get some answers. Victor staggered back and grabbed the edge of the table. What's wrong with you? David asked. I don't know. I feel dizzy. He's overworked, Anna said quickly. David, let's talk another time. Shut up. David approached his father. You changed the will, didn't you? In favor of this? He glanced at Anna. Victor tried to say something, but he was having trouble getting the words out. David grabbed a folder from the desk and quickly looked through the documents. I knew it! You disinherited me! For her! David, it's not what you think. Anna tried to intervene. Shut up, whore! David threw the file on the floor. Did you think you were going to get everything? The company? The money? The house? Victor tried to get between them, but he wobbled and fell to his knees. What's wrong with him? David turned to Anna. What did you give him? Anna retreated to the door. Nothing, he's just not feeling well. David leaned over to his father and helped him up. Dad, what's wrong with you? She put something in his system, Victor whispered. David turned sharply to Anna. What did you give him? He's lying, Anna exclaimed. I didn't give him anything. David sat his father down in the chair and stepped toward Anna. She grabbed a bronze statue of an eagle from the table. Stay away! You poisoned him. David took another step. Did you want to speed up your inheritance? No. Anna swung the statue. Stay away from me! David lunged at her, trying to snatch the statue. A struggle ensued, and they spun around the office, knocking over furniture. At one point, Victor staggered to his feet and tried to break them up. Stop it! He wheezed, grabbing David by the shoulder. David instinctively pushed him away. Victor, losing his balance, fell to the edge of the table and hit his head. At that moment, Anna broke free of David's grip and struck him with the statue. David recoiled, grabbing his face. Anna threw the statuette in a panic and ran out of the office. David, breathing heavily, leaned over to his father, who lay motionless on the floor. Dad? He shook him by the shoulders. Dad, wake up! But Victor didn't move. A thin trickle of blood dripped from his head onto the floor. David put his fingers to his father's neck, then recoiled. No, no, no! He rushed around the office, grabbed a bottle of whiskey, took a big gulp straight from the neck. Then he put the bottle down, picked up the statue, looked at it for a while, then put it back on the desk. His gaze fell on the camera. David froze, then strode determinedly toward the bookshelf, but stopped at the last moment. Let it go, he muttered. Let everyone know what she'd done. He left the office, and the camera continued to record the empty room and Victor's motionless body. Frost stopped the video. There was a heavy silence in the room. Make a copy, the detective finally said, and call the prosecutor. 2 hours later, the conference room at the St. Cloud police station was packed with everyone involved in the drama. David sat with a bandaged head, the mark of a blow from a statue. Anna nervously fidgeted with the strap of an expensive watch. Nancy Howell sat in the far corner, pale and frightened. Detective Frost entered the room and placed the case file on the table. Thank you all for coming. I've invited you here to officially close the Victor Stone murder case. Can I be released? David asked. I've already told you everything. Not so fast, Mr. Stone. Frost sat down at the head of the table. There were too many lies in this case until the last moment. Now it was time for the truth. He opened a folder and pulled out crime scene photos. Victor Stone was killed as a result of his head hitting the edge of the table. It happened accidentally during a fight between you, Mr. Stone, and your father, which was instigated by your wife, Mrs. Stone. Anna raised her head. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. You put sleeping pills in Victor Stone's whiskey, Frost continued. A drug you take regularly yourself, according to the prescriptions in your purse. That doesn't prove... We have the tape, Mrs. Stone. A hidden camera in the office captured the events of that night. Anna's face turned pale. What camera? The one your husband installed 2 weeks ago when he suspected you of cheating on him with his father. David grinned. I began to notice strange behavior in Anna. She was constantly getting texts, hiding her cell phone. Then I saw her kissing her father at a corporate event. Everyone thought I didn't notice. So you knew? Anna whispered. Of course I knew, David laughed bitterly. Do you think I'm that stupid? I set up the camera hoping to get proof of the divorce. And what I got? This. Frost turned to Anna. Mrs. Stone, you didn't plan to kill Victor, but you did slip him a sleeping pill, probably to make him more cooperative and not insist on telling David about your relationship. This had tragic consequences when David returned unexpectedly. You can't prove that I spiked the sleeping pills, Anna said stubbornly. Your fingerprints were on the glass, and microparticles of the same drug found in Victor's blood. Frost turned to David. As for you, Mr. Stone, you lied about your whereabouts at the time of the murder. You claimed to have been in Minneapolis all night, when in fact you had returned to St. Cloud and gone straight to your father's house. I explained why I lied, David said. I was ashamed to admit that my wife had cheated on me with my own father. And you didn't plot to kill your father? No, of course not. I was angry, yes, but I didn't want him dead. It was an accident. Frost nodded. According to forensics, that's exactly what happened. Victor Stone died from his head hitting the edge of the table. But there's another point that worries me. He turned to Anna. Mrs. Stone, the tape shows you hitting your husband with the statue and running away. You didn't check on your father-in-law, you didn't call an ambulance. Instead, you fled the scene. I panicked. Anna lowered her head. I didn't know what to do. I thought Victor had just passed out. And you didn't call the police even later? I was afraid. Frost turned to the prosecutor sitting next to him. Based on all the evidence gathered, I recommend that Anna Stone be charged with manslaughter and obstruction of justice. David Stone with concealment of evidence. The prosecutor nodded. I agree with your assessment, Detective Frost. We'll prepare the charges accordingly. The officers led Anna out of the room. She didn't resist. She didn't seem to have the strength left to do so. David remained seated, staring into the space in front of him. What will happen to the company now? He asked Frost when they were almost alone. The new will hasn't been formalized yet, so you'll probably be left with everything. But I suppose that's small consolation. David grinned bitterly. You know, I've spent my whole life trying to earn my father's approval. Worked 18 hours a day, married a woman he liked, and still it wasn't enough, and it still wasn't enough. And now, he spread his hands. Now I have the company I never wanted, and no father or wife. Frost put his hand on David's shoulder. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. Me too, Detective. Me too. An hour later, Frost sat in his office, filling out the report. He still had a lot of work to do to close the case officially, but the basic work was done. Killer found, motive established, justice served. But why did it feel so heavy? Perhaps because there was no real villain in this case. Only people who had made mistakes, succumbed to passions and weaknesses. Victor, carried away by his son's young wife. Anna, seduced by the wealth and power of the elder Stone. David, too absorbed in his work to notice that he was losing his wife. And here was the result. 1 man dead, 2 going to trial, and the lives of everyone connected to Victor Stone ruined. Frost closed the case file and turned off the desk lamp. Outside the office window, snow was falling, covering St. Cloud with a white blanket that hid all the sins and secrets of this small town. But the detective knew that beneath this snow-white purity always lurked the dark secrets of human souls, which sooner or later would come to the surface. That's the nature of secrets. They can't stay hidden forever. And his job was to bring them out into the light, no matter how painful the consequences.